Hello everyone, Tina here. I hope you're having a fabulous day. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I get to share with you 10 cards made with the Spellbinders Card Kit of the month. Today is the first, and so we're making 10 cards, and I did the unboxing. I'll link it at the end if you want to know what's inside this month's kit. It's called Vintage Mementos, and it is all about vintage, which I love because I haven't created vintage cards in a long time. So we're going to start off by using the die in this month's kit. I die cut out the frame with the gold cardstock. So pretty, and it die cuts and embosses beautifully. My vintage cards, I usually break out my vintage photo. This is Distress ink, and I'm just using my mini blending tool here and going around the edges of some pattern paper that I trimmed down. The size of this panel here measures 3.5 inches by 4 3/4. And then this long strip here measures 2.5 inches by 5.5 inches. After my pattern papers are distressed on the edges, I thought, you know, we're going to distress everything. We went ahead and distressed our die cut pieces that I picked for this card. Now, the kit does come with foam adhesive and tape, which work fabulous, guys. But I use a lot of it, and for time purposes, I'm bringing in my own. Tape runners just seems easier for me during a video rather than peeling up the release paper, but the tape works fabulous. We're going to go ahead and adhere this strip down the middle. We already adhered our teal colored strip first, and I realized my pattern's upside down, so we're going to flip it around. I have a little bit of pattern overhanging, so we'll just take the scissors and trim it off. And then that straight edge does not have any ink on it, so I'm going to open it up and just kind of dab a little bit of my vintage photo on the bottom. So we have a lot of distress left here. We're going to flip over our gold frame. I did use the insert to create my frame here, and I added foam adhesive behind it. I placed it on my panel or my card base, and then we're going to use a few of the die cut pieces. I have the key and the lock, and then there's a sentiment that says happy birthday. I picked up that. I'm actually going to kind of add the sentiment on the inside of the lock, so it's kind of peeking out from the edge. Kind of placing it wonky, but keeping my happy birthday straight. Doing a little tucking here. I think of all the cards today, this one's my favorite, only because I love the colors. I love the vintage teal and the pink in this card. Okay, now I added the butterfly, and I think that looks fabulous as it is. But I was looking at the stamp set, and there is a really pretty key in the stamp set. So I have my card all ready to go. I thought all we could do is add a few sequins, but that key was calling me. So I'm going to place my key on an acrylic block, treat my card with my anti-static powder tool, and then I'm going to ink up the key with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. It stays sticky, so we can do some heat embossing. I wanted to make sure when I stamped it on the bottom that you could actually tell it was a key, so I wanted the top and the bottom of the key to show. I'm going to stamp it once on the top, kind of flipping it around, and then I wasn't sure if I was going to have to do a redo or not, but I added my gold embossing powder to the key, and then I went ahead and melted it, guys, and I got lucky, I suppose, but that little extra gold just added that perfect amount of touch to it. So I called that card all finished. So now we're going to move along to card number 2. I die cut out another frame. This time I didn't use the insert, I just die cut out the frame piece, and I used the kind of like the brushed gold cardstock that was in the kit. The postcard in the die cut pack fit beautifully inside that frame, so that's what I did. I went ahead and adhered it to my frame so I have a decorative edge on the outside. Now I have 2 of the same die cut pieces. They're florals, they're beautiful roses, and I added foam adhesive behind there, and I thought since the other gold embossing powder looks so pretty, I thought we'd add a little bit of detail to our card base for a little bit of something in the background. So I stamped my little birdie image, and then I'm going to flip it around and basically create kind of like an upside down Y with it. I should have maybe went at a diagonal on hindsight, only because the left part of the Y, this one, you really can't see this one here. So I kind of stamped not neatly. We're going to stamp this one. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab that gold embossing powder and go over my images. I did have a little bit of a smudge, but I think I can get away with it with the florals that I'm going to be adding. So just, I wanted a little bit of this gold image peeking out from behind my main focal images. So basically it's going to look like this. When I already added foam adhesive behind my flowers, I'm going to add it behind my frame and add my frame. For my sentiment, I'm going to use the Darling die cut piece, and then I'm also going to use the For You. So my sentiment will read For You, Darling, and the colors of the sentiment and the Darling are perfect because they match the roses. Last but not least, I'm just going to add a few of my these gems didn't come in the kit. They're gold, like gold pearls. I just grabbed them from my stash and added those. But that's card number 2. Okay, card number 3, I did some die cutting with the border die that was in the kit. Now I'm adhering them. I die cut 4 of them out, and I'm going to adhere them to the same gold cardstock that I cut into 1/4-inch strips. I wanted to create a standalone kind of a frame, a square one, and I think the gold behind it's gonna, I can add foam adhesive eventually behind it to pop it up. So that's why I'm adding the gold behind it. I did that to all 4. Now gluing on the gold cardstock in the kit takes a little bit of time to dry. It likes to wibble wobble. So I suggest just being a little patient and letting that dry, or using maybe your tape runner. Okay, I'm going to be using a memory card from the kit that has rounded edges, and so I thought we would round the corners of this cardstock piece. Now this cardstock panel has the pink words on it, so it's like a two-tone. It measures 3.5 inches by 4.5 inches. So we're going to kind of mat it with our memory card. We're going to adhere this after we distress the edges a little bit with our vintage photo. And then for our memory card, and it killed me to put foam tape behind that beautiful frame. I added foam tape behind here. We're going to pop this up and place it in the center. Okay, next we're going to take our frame pieces. In a minute, we're going to stamp our sentiment first. In the stamp set, there's a beautiful sentiment that says, "So many of my smiles begin with you." So we're going to add some more gold. So I'm going to stamp it on some white cardstock. This is the cardstock that came with the kit this month. I'm going to treat my paper with my anti-static powder tool, and then we're going to stamp our sentiment with the same Versamark or VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And it stamps beautifully, and the cardstock actually has a little bit of a texture to it. I think this one does, but it stamps beautifully. I added my gold embossing powder, and we're just going to melt it till it's nice and shiny. And the smiles and the U on the sentiment kind of have a distressed look, and I thought that would be really pretty with the distressed memory card and the pattern paper. I'm just going to take a rectangle die that kind of fits my sentiment and die cut that out so it's ready to go. Now here's where we're going to add our foam adhesive behind our frame, adding it to all 4 pieces, and I'm going to offset it on my panel a little bit so it's a little bit more towards the right, just to give it a little so everything's not centered, just kind of so your eyes will go off to the side a little bit. I'm just going to add I ended up actually adding 2 pieces of foam adhesive to that very first one that we laid down because our panel is popped up a little bit. But there's our gold frame. I just think it's gorgeous. I'm going to go ahead and add foam adhesive behind my sentiment, and then we're going to offset this, and so the right edge is lined up with the right edge of our card base. Add that, and then for my image I'm using the beautiful little golden hummingbird. I'm going to add that to our frame. Last but not least, for some bells and whistles, we're going to add a few dots of glue and adhere some of our sequins that came in the kit this month. There's a real bright, bold fuchsia color, and then there's a real soft, almost like a holographic pink. I'm just using the softer pinks that are in our sequin pack. I'm going to add a few here and there, and that finishes off card number 3. Now we're moving along to card number 4. I used the decorative circle die. I'll link it down below. It's super pretty. And cut out a large circle. I'm adhering it with kind of a mauve colored pattern paper. I adhered that to my card base, and then I'm going to use one of the frames, the chipboard frames. You just remove the backing and it's pre-sticked, pre-adhesive backed. And then I thought we'd add the suitcase and our little florals. I just added foam adhesive behind them. For my sentiment, we're going to use a die cut piece that says "Today is your day." We're going to add that, and then last but not least, we are going to round the corner. I have this is new to me. I just picked it up. It's from Fun Stamper's Journey. It's a corner rounder. I have my corner chomper, but I think it's dulling down. So I picked this one up and I really like it. So I just chomped the top right corner of that card, and that was done. Now for card number 5, I have 2 pieces of pattern paper, and then I also have the teal colored with the gold accent pattern paper. I'm using a memory card, and I wanted my banners on the memory card to kind of stick out a little bit, so that's why I have those 2 pattern paper pieces. They're about the same size as the ones that are on the memory card. We're gonna trim part of the sentiment that's on the memory card just using my craft knife, and then what I want to do is go ahead and add our pattern paper right over the existing banners. I just wanted a little bit more dimension on my card, and I think this is a great way to do it. If you wanted to fully cut out your sentiment on your memory card and then pop it up after you adhere them, you could do that as well. But I thought just trimming out that left part of the sentiment, and it reads, it had to be you, by the way, but I thought it would be a little bit easier. So I'm going to go ahead and fishtail the ends of my banners, and then add my pattern paper right over our banners that are on the memory card, kind of overlapping both of them. And then the excess that's overhanging, we're going to trim off, kind of corner rounding that top there. Okay, now to give it a little bit of dimension, I'm going to flip them up a little bit and add a foam square behind them. So our memory card now has dimension, kind of going with the same feel that it originally had on there, just kind of curling up the ends of our fishtail. That way we have added dimension. Now for this pattern paper, we're going to mat our memory card on it, but I wanted a straight edge on the very bottom, so I'm trimming off about a 1/4 inch from our memory card on the very bottom. We want that straight edge. And then my pattern paper piece here measures 3.5 inches wide by 4.25 inches tall. I'm going to round the corners off the tall end of our pattern paper, and then of course we got to distress the edges a little bit with our vintage photo. I'm going to go ahead and adhere this all the way to the bottom of our card base, kind of centering it, and then we'll flip over our fishtail banner piece and add foam adhesive behind this and add that in the center. I went ahead and added the peacock that was in the die cut pack, and a few of the sentiments. One of them says always and forever, the other one says today, and then I thought, you know what, we're going to add a butterfly too, so we're going to put that in the largest fishtail banner there. I did add foam adhesive. For finishing touches, I'm going to go ahead and add some of those pretty pink sequins, just adding the glue first and then picking up those sequins and adding a few here, spreading out that pink, and that finishes off card number 5. That peacock is so pretty, oh my goodness. For my next card, I'm going to move along to card number 6 here. We're going to create a collage card. Actually, all my cards today are collage cards, so I want to do a little something different with the edge of my card base. I'm going to bring in my paper trimmer, and we're going to take a 1-inch strip off of our opening of our card base. We're going to keep that strip for a sentiment. Actually, maybe later on. Now I had also embossed a panel that measures 4 inches by 5.25. I embossed it with the diagonal stripe embossing folder from Fun Stamper's Journey. And the back of my background is going to be white, so I wanted to add a little texture. So using those diagonal stripes in an embossing folder thought would work really well. Okay, we're going to open up our card, and I have a 1.5 inch strip of the polka dot pattern paper We're going to add that to the inside of our card. What's overhanging we'll just trim off. And then for the edge of our card, I'm going to bring in a die that was the small die of the month for May. There are some pretty border dies in here, and I thought we would put this to good use. I'm just going to die cut out a pretty border with some gold cardstock. Once that's die cut out, I added adhesive behind it, or on top of it actually, and then we're going to add this just underneath our opening, so we have a decorative edge when you open it up. And I think I kind of tacked it down. I went crazy with the glue, with the tape, so I was trying to remove the excess. We're going to flip over our embossed panel and add that. We're going to butt it up all against the gold area, and then the rest will have a little bit of a border around it. So that's kind of a different opening for our card. Now we're going to collage some of the die cut pieces. I have the little ink jar we're going to add foam adhesive to, and then I have some roses that we're going to directly adhere to our card front, and then we'll pop up our ink and put them on top of the roses. After we have that adhered, I do have the little ink pen or the quill, and then I have the real pretty circle that has the bird on it. I added that, and then the sentiment that says celebrate on the very bottom. Now last but not least, I added some of the gold pearls from my stash, and then we're gonna add a little bit of glossiness to the label of our ink jar. If you wanted to handwrite a little sentiment in there, I think that would be pretty. But I thought the Journey Glaze inside the banner would be perfect. We're gonna add a little more because I had a little bit of a dent, but it just shined it up really pretty. That finishes card number 6, our little collage card with the pretty opening. Now for card number 7, we're going to make a clock card. Now I have a panel here that measures 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches. I'm actually going to mat this gold cardstock with the Peacock feather pattern paper. I didn't want to waste the gold cardstock, so I'm die cutting out a frame for future use, and then also I'm die cutting out that pretty one of the pretty borders. I'm carefully making sure that's in the center, because it is going to leave me about 1/8 of an inch around my pattern paper here. But I kind of cheated a little bit, but you would never know, and I still have some of those pretty die cut pieces. We're going to go ahead and add this to the center of our card base. Next I have a memory card. The memory card is so pretty. It says time flies but memories last forever. I have one of the frames that has the beautiful peacock feathers on it. I'm going to remove the release paper and add that to my memory card. Now a little bit of it's overlapping. We're going to trim that off with the scissors. And then that's going to be our sentiment for this card, along with the happy birthday from the die cut pack. We're going to go ahead and add foam adhesive behind our frame. Add this to the center. I was going to go wonky and thought, no, we'll go straight center. And then there's 2 clocks in the die cut pack. I have both of them, taking the larger one, and I'm adding it over the clock that was on our memory card piece, kind of covering it up, and then the excess that's overhanging will open up the card and then trim off. And then we're going to go ahead and add foam adhesive behind our smaller clock, and then also foam adhesive behind our sentiment. I thought we had that little gold border. We can add a little bit of gold detail to our happy birthday sentiment. So we're going to go ahead and use a little bit of tape and add it behind our sentiment, and then pick up our decorative edge and just tack it down. I think that looks so pretty. We're going to add foam adhesive behind our sentiment, kind of tuck it under our smaller clock and do a little layering with the clocks. And then I think that looks fabulous. Now, that finishes off that card. Pretty simple card. Now, if you want to add gloss, or not glossy accents, well, yes, glossy accents, or journey glaze to your clock, you could do that. But on our next card, it's very, very simple. I have a piece of pattern paper that I rounded the corners on. Now, it measures 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I also rounded the corners, just the top corners of my card base. Next we're going to take our memory card. This one's another pretty, they're also pretty. This one says, life is a journey, best traveled with friends. I'm going to go ahead and add this to our card base. And then this is a beautiful die cut piece. There's some soft pinks in there. I'm going to replace the florals that are on our journaling card with the softer colors. I just layered it on top. Then I'm going to use another one of those circles that have the bird on it. Add that right next to the sentiment, and then for the rest of the sentiment I'm going to add let the wind carry you. We'll just add foam adhesive behind it and place that centering it on our journaling card here, kind of overlapping on that gold that's peeking out on the bottom of our memory card, kind of replacing that gold with the blue. I'm going to finish this one off with a few gold gems, and then that finishes off card number 8. Pretty simple one, but I love the little music notes in the background. Okay, next card, number 9. I had a floral embossing folder, and it has swirlies on it. Kind of reminded me of a little vintage feel. So I have a panel that measures 4 inches by 5 1/4, and then I'm distressing the edges with my vintage photo, and then I'm using my blending tool and just adding a little bit of shading, about a 1/2 inch on my panel, just so it's kind of got that vintagey look on the edges. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of vintage photo to my music note sheet here, and also my chipboard frame. It kind of slides really good on the chipboard frame, but it does stain it a little bit, give it a vintage feel. We're going to go ahead and add our background panel directly to our card base, just using the tape runner. And then I'm going to take my music note. Well, we're going to remove the release paper off of our frame. This is going to go kind of in the center, and I wanted the bottom of my frame to be tucked underneath. So we'll remove the release paper, add our music note sheet, kind of tucking it under, and I think that looks great. We'll press it down after it's centered. I wanted to use some of the chipboard stickers in the pack, and so this is the same floral, light floral piece that we used for our previous card. I wanted to use that on the very bottom of this pink frame. I didn't adhere it just yet. I wanted to add this chipboard sticker that says enjoy the moment, and it's kind of a little tricky peeling these up from that plastic sheet, guys. I had found that there's maybe take your time in peeling it up, or maybe even using a craft pick, because my adhesive backing picked up from it. It wanted to peel away when I was picking up my stickers. So it was a little tricky. I would just suggest taking your time removing these from that plastic sheet that they're on. But I want to directly stick my sentiment to that floral die cut piece, and then I'm going to add foam adhesive to the very bottom, and then we're going to tack this down to the bottom of our frame. I'm going to raise it up just a little bit. I think that the colors just look so pretty. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and add our bird. This bird is from the die cut pack also. I'm going to add foam square behind here. And then I have a little sentiment that says for you. It's a real soft pink with gold letters. And I thought, you know what, we're going to add that. Wasn't sure where to put it. I think below the sentiment is going to work out great. We'll just add a thin strip of foam adhesive behind there. And add for you. And then there's also some music notes inside our little die cut stickers. You have to, again, be real careful removing these because the sticky back will come up. If you want to just use glue, if the sticky back does come up, I think that's going to work fine because it doesn't affect the chipboard. I'm going to add all 3 notes kind of around my little scene here. We're going to scoot this one over just a bit. Then we have one more. And there's already bells and whistles in here, so I was going to use the key and change my mind. But there's rhinestones and there's dimension. So that card's all done. Now for my final card today, I'm using this memory card. I'm trimming off the top portion of it, and then I'm going to flip it over, add foam adhesive behind it. We're going to place this on the bottom of our card base, and I'm going to have it setting a little, about a 1/4 inch off of the card base. There's a curved edge on my memory card, and I wanted to keep it a straight edge. So just where it starts to stop curving, I'm gonna trim that off. Okay, and I have some new scissors, which are fabulous, by the way, but when I trimmed it, I was afraid that I trimmed the inside of my envelope, but no worries, it didn't cut through. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and add my sentiment. I trimmed off, putting a straight edge on the left side of it. It says the time of my life. I went ahead and added my frame using foam adhesive. The frame was in the die cut pack along with the other clock and the butterfly. We added those, and we'll add our third butterfly here. And then after, I think that looks good. I think it's nice and balanced, but I do want to bring a little bit of shine to my clock. So I'm going to bring in my Journey Glaze. I just want to make sure this is sitting straight. I was afraid it was going to warp, and you know what, after my Journey Glaze dried, guys, it did warp. I suggest maybe if you're going to add the clock and then add your Journey Glaze or glossy accents on top of it, that you would maybe back it with some gold cardstock or something heavy duty, a heavy duty card-based cardstock, only because it did warp. All the weight of the Journey Glaze kind of warped it. You could kind of see here. So if you back it on a heavier sheet, I think you would avoid that problem. But that is card number 10. So now we're going to look at all 10 cards that I made today with the Spellbinders July 2020 Card Kit of the Month. Vintage Mementos. Loved it. Lots of collage going on. Not real clean and simple cards, but I do love the vintage look, and I hope you guys enjoyed my projects. There are still shots over on my blog if you guys want to check out each individual picture. Sometimes when I add them to my video, it takes up too much memory and I have a hard time uploading. So I just put them over on my blog. If you guys want to check them out, they're over there. But if you're new, want to know what was in the kit, I'll leave the unboxing at the end here. You can check that out. Have a fabulous day. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. We will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.